For the people who come to work with me, more than anything else, I think the experience of being told your emotions are wrong and they shouldn't be this way is perhaps one of the biggest reasons that they've ended up in an experience of suffering and then ultimately ended up looking for a way to not suffer. Because, of course, something in us says, no, this isn't us, this isn't how it's meant to be. So very often their doorway has been through psychological. So if you caught my video the other day, I'll pop it below as well. You might recognize yourself as either somebody who's tried to use your psychological experience, your thoughts and thinking, to either put a lid on your experience or to get lost in your experience, to try and avoid a deeper emotional situation, a deeper emotion that you think you can't handle, that you think is dangerous, that you think is wrong. But the only reason that's an experience in your system, the only reason you think that emotion is wrong is because you were taught that. Because most likely, when you were growing up, you were surrounded by people who couldn't handle your emotion, who couldn't hold themselves in your emotion. It wasn't your emotion that was wrong. It was that they just didn't have the capacity to be with you in it. They didn't have the ability in themselves to be with their own emotion. So therefore, of course, they couldn't be with you in yours. But as a child, you didn't know that. As a child, you just received the message that my emotion is wrong. My emotion is too much. My emotion is too big. My emotion isn't allowed. It's too much to handle. It's not meant to be like this. I'm wrong for being like this. And so in that experience, emotion then gets covered over by various different coping strategies, navigation strategies, avoidance strategies. Very often it ultimately leads people to feel anxious, stressed, overwhelmed, panicky, depressed, all different ways that the system is trying to avoid us from looking at the core of the emotional experience. And ultimately, when we get to kind of 40, 50, usually particularly around 40, 50, sometimes later, but usually around then, that's when the system has reached or is reaching a crescendo of ability to be able to keep avoiding that emotional experience. Whichever strategy we've used at the level of the mind to either put a lid on thought or get lost in thought, that strategy is starting to lose its ability to function. It's starting to show the cracks, or we're suffering in it so much that it's not tenable to keep going in that direction anymore. And that's brilliant because then that brings us back down into this experience to start to be with ourselves, first of all, in our feelings that come with our thinking, and then to get deeper and deeper and deeper so that ultimately we meet the emotional experiences that we've avoided and avoided and avoided through fear that they're too much, that they're wrong, that they shouldn't be like this, that I'm wrong for experiencing them. And the more that we see that they are okay, that we are okay with them, that there is nothing wrong with us or with them, nothing wrong with us, nothing wrong with our emotional experience, the more that's seen, the more it can just roll and flow through like it's naturally designed to. Nothing to resist, nothing to avoid, nothing to push away, nothing to escape, with the escape usually having been into the mind, into thoughts and thinking. When we stop needing to escape the emotion, then we stop spending our time either putting thought lids on things or getting lost in thought with things. So I wonder if this resonates for you. I wonder if you feel like your emotional experience was made wrong for you as a child. You'll know that if you make yourself wrong for your emotional experience now as an adult. You'll definitely notice it if you find yourself lost in thought and thinking. That is the escape mechanism to try and avoid the emotion. And if you've dropped beneath the thoughts and thinking, then perhaps you still have this sense of when these emotions arise, there's still a reaction in the body against that emotion. Even if you've seen at the thought level that it's not true, there's still a reaction against the emotion, still a pushing away, still a making it wrong. Still a judgment of it shouldn't be like this, I shouldn't be like this. How do I get rid of this? How do I change this? How do I fix this? And what the invitation here is to turn around from that, to switch into compassion and understanding for why you've been afraid of your emotions, and to see that there is nothing wrong and nothing dangerous about them. To stop there being that reaction away from them and the ability instead just to be with them as they are. Oh my goodness, the amount of capacity that you realize in yourself when you do that is phenomenal. Because instead of spending your energy escaping into the mind, creating thought stories about stuff, you can spend your time in presence with your emotion as it is. And you can unravel the years of conditioning that have told you that this emotion is wrong and it shouldn't be like this and it shouldn't be here and you're wrong for experiencing it and it's too much and blah, 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 blah. You can unravel all of that by simply being with the emotional experience as it is. Does this resonate for you? Do you see this in your experience? Do you see how you've been suffering in the mind when all that was wanted was the emotion as it is? Do you see how that's actually what you wanted as a child? You wanted somebody there who could hold you in your emotional experience, and you didn't have that. They couldn't. The people around us, they couldn't do that for us at that stage in our lives. But you can do it now for yourself. That's the amazing thing. You don't even need anybody else, really. Sometimes it's nice to have somebody there, some stabilizers, to support us while we remember that we can do this for ourselves. We can be there for ourselves. We can be with ourselves in our emotional experience. So let me know, drop a comment. Tell me if this resonates for you. And if you do want to go deeper, if you do want to be able to remember how to be with yourself in your emotional experience, then that is entirely what we're focusing on in April in the Enlightenment event. We're going to be relearning how to stay present with ourselves, how to be with ourselves, how to support these emotions in being in our body, in being felt, without having to be escaped or run away from. It opens up so much for you. So I'll drop the links in below, and I'd love to meet you there if it feels good for you. Lots of love.